Ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem. But before we get into the problem, my oldest son has turned 19 years of age today, which might also be a problem. I'm getting older. I was very young when I had him, so proud of this young man, and it's been a heck of a roller coaster. So today has been birthday day, and I just snuck into the office. I stayed up late last night, and here gets to some of the problem. The problem is a lot of claims are made within the New Testament. I focus highly on Christianity because that's what I was, a Christian. But trust me, I will be critical and open to being critical of all religions, period. Now, what was the problem? Well, last night I stayed up, okay? And I've been recording or crafting, if you will, a script for now 2 days. The script is up to 15,000 words, and it is all about the we passages in Acts and how I'm going to tackle this whole companion of Paul, the eyewitness claims, this proves eyewitness and that he was there and he saw and all of that. When I tell you this is going to be exhaustive and pretty deep for a YouTube video, this is exhaustive. I cover Bart Ehrman, Vernon Robbins, I cover Dennis R. MacDonald, I cover a few other scholars as well. I highlight the problem with the companion hypothesis from different angles. And I was going to bed last night and I thought to myself, my goodness, this problem isn't just a problem for apologists. This is a problem that I think for any New Testament critical scholar who is, in my opinion, taking at face value Paul's own letters. Now we know Dutch radicals, Robert Price, Nina Livesey, others have been challenging whether or not the letters are authentic and should we trust them. You know, Nina Livesey puts them into a second century epistolary fiction category. But the consensus of scholars is that Paul wrote 7 letters. And the reasons vary as to why they do that. Usually it's commonality of language, which seemed to be a similar author. We do show that, the earliest collection, and by the way, we find Paul's letters for the first time ever in history as a collection in Marcion. Odd. It is odd. Paul was clearly a problem for the book of Acts, the author of Acts, Paul's actual life, actual letters according to the consensus. And that is why they have him tamed. That is why they have him buckle in circumcising Timothy when Galatians 5 has him so against this that you have literally forsaken Christ if you are circumcising, and there's neither circumcision nor uncircumcision in Christ. You don't need to do it. And he says, I wish those who are telling you to circumcise would castrate themselves. Cut the whole thing off, right? All sorts of details that conflict between Paul's letters and Acts. But you might go, but what's the problem for the critical scholars? I don't get it. So I read Forgery, Counter-Forgery. Again, I mentioned Vernon Robbins' work where he talks about sea voyages and first-person plural narratives, whereas there's first-person singular. So for those who don't know, a first-person singular narrative is when someone says I, me. I went and I, Peter, I, Paul, I went, it was me, I, me. First-person singular. First-person plural is, us, our, we. These plurals that include this group. And then you have third person, they, right? And a lot of these texts do the third person, but the we stuff specifically shows up in Acts at a certain point when they get on a ship. In Acts 16, there's one manuscript tradition that has a variant, and that's documented in the script that I'm bringing up, where it shows up in Acts 11. But the manuscript tradition we have, it appears in Acts 16. And this is when there's a voyage at sea and they're leaving Troas and they're heading off on their mission. Paul is heading to Rome. I think Richard Purvo called this in his commentary a proto-Catholicizing book. From Jerusalem to Rome, the mission is Rome, where the church will be established, right? Well, I've dodged what the problem is. The problem is this. Bart writes in his book, Forgery, Counter-Forgery, especially in the we passages, he documents a lot of examples. I'm jumping ahead, but if you go to that passage, it's around the 400s in his book. If you go to his we section, you get past some of the introductory material about why he thinks that the we passages connect to the first person singular, I in Luke chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. He connects the we passages to I as if this author, he thinks, is trying to authenticate or give the impression that he's a real eyewitness. Apologists fall for this. So if you go into that approach, you have a real problem of deception on your hands in Acts. If you take Bart's approach, whoever wrote the we passages is pretending to be a person who is participating in this actual narrative as if he knows. That's what's happening. If that's the case, there is so much deception that it creates a problem. And I'm not going to give you all the details of the script because it's 15,000 words and it gets into the weeds, and I'm highlighting all sorts of, I'm showing you stuff that I've never seen a YouTube video do on this level. But the problem is this: once you see all the literature that they're forging, that they're making up, that they're inventing, that there's deception, that they're cribbing material, I mean, you name it, and they're pretending to be eyewitnesses like 1 John. If you claim the we passages like Bart, the we passages, the end of the epilogue in chapter 21 of John, right? You get all of these little eyewitness claims. They claim that they saw. Then you have visionary experiences, right? In the Gospels, you get it. In Acts, you get it. You get these narrations, which most scholars think are fictive. Most of the critical scholars think that these visionary experiences in this literature are fictive. Take the Apocalypse of John. On the island of Patmos, he has a vision. This whole vision is literary. It's not a real vision. It's a well-crafted vision. It's a fiction. And in that, he writes 7 letters. These 7 letters are fiction. It's part of the story. And so when you get to Paul's letters, I sit there and ask myself about the critical scholars and this problem here is, why do you trust the visionary accounts that are described? I met a man who, went to the third heaven, which he's talking about himself. According to most scholars, I think he's speaking about himself or having some type of visionary experience where he went to the third heaven. But even 1 Corinthians 15, where he appears to the 12 and he appeared to more than 500 brethren at once, and he appeared to all these visions. You get all the material. Gospels, fictive. Revelation, fictive. Critical scholarship sees this. And then I read Paul and I go, well, why would someone trust this guy when he says he appeared to me, he appeared to the 12, he appeared to more than 500 brethren at once? Why would anyone not think first that that is also deception? Do not take that at face value. Do not trust this account. When all of these letters in Paul's name are being made up, forged, they're inventing fictive visions as well as eyewitness claims. There's so much deception that I don't understand why scholars would get to the 7 letters and go, okay, among those 7, 3 of them, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, and Galatians, I believe it's Galatians, or Galatians, I believe it is. Yeah, Galatians says he's kind of having an internal apocalypse visions, appearances, if you will, of the Lord, who's giving him this insight. I just don't know why we wouldn't possibly categorize this as deception as well. Meaning, I'm not saying it is, but the analogy I gave, and it had Bob Price and Dennis MacDonald and Richard Miller. I spoke all 3 of them today briefly. Kind of had them chuckle. And the analogy I'd give is, imagine we're 1,000 feet in the air. Some traveler engineer is pointing at this bridge and says, listen, see that bridge? 1,000 feet, right? Reverse Pascal's wager. I want you to think about this. They always say to you, it's better that you believe. Just believe anyways, because in case hell's real, you don't want to go to hell, so you might as well believe just in case. And if it's not true, you die, lights go out, no problem, no hell. Well, it's kind of problematic because there's plenty of other hells from other religions. Believe it or not, they have other places where things don't go good in the afterlife for you, and for different reasons. Just depends on the religion. But I reverse the Pascal's wager in this way, and I say there's a bridge 1,000 feet above the ground, meaning you're looking down. The bridge is swinging. It's a swinging bridge, and there's all of these planks, wooden planks that cross the bridge. And the guy turns and says, hey, listen, most of these planks here are termite infested. They're not trustworthy. You really shouldn't step on them. You step on that and depend on that, you're falling through the hole because it's not a good piece of wood. But there's some pieces of wood on that bridge we think are authentic. We think that they're solid. There's some of those pieces you could probably step on and be fine. And I think to myself, with all the lies equaling the termite-infested wood to cross this bridge, why would I trust that some of these planks are real, are authentic, and we should trust them? Why doesn't the deception, at least theoretically, still apply to these Galatians, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians passages in Paul? Meaning, why is the deception not all the way down to the ground? What if the whole artifice is built on sand? I just don't understand why there's such confidence, and we're engaging even with 1 Corinthians 15. So they really did see 12 because Gerd Ludemann said, or someone else says. They're confident that they had visions and they really saw the appearances of Jesus in some visionary form. They could have. People have visions all the time. I'm not doubting that. We're dealing with ancient literature where we know they're being deceptive and claiming to be people they're not in many of these pieces of material. And even the fundamentalist Christian evangelical literalist is forced to this conclusion outside of the canon. Apocalypse of Peter, Gospels of Thomas, Gospel of Peter, Acts of Thomas. There's so many books that they do not believe they actually wrote. Critical scholars take it a step further than them and say, well, in the canon, we got problems. And by the way, critical scholars started with Christians who noticed this stuff. So it wasn't an atheist agenda or an agnostic agenda. But then you go further and I go, why are we taking 1 Corinthians 15 so at face value and trusting this text actually happened? Like, they've really had all these visions and these are the real people who had them. How do we know that's not part of the deception? Why trust it? This is a cult leader, Paul, telling you ultimately how he undeservedly worked harder than all of the rest and just so happened to be born in an untimely period, but he appeared last of all to me. As if he's the final stamp, the final prophet, in a sense, of like, hey, I'm the one, I'm bringing the message, listen to me. Why trust that? You don't trust Joseph Smith. You don't trust, the various other cult leaders who pop up on a day-to-day basis claiming to have visions, claiming to have revelations, claiming to have eyewitnesses see their miracles and stuff with Sabbatai Zevi. You don't do that. And so my question is simply a problem that I thought about last night. It was like, why would they just accept this 1 Corinthians stuff and not question that? They can throw 2 Peter under the bus and say, we did not follow cleverly devised myths. We were eyewitnesses on his mountain. We, first person plural. We. And it's like, we know that's deceptive. Now, with the we passages, I'm going to save my lightning and thunder for that actual video that's going to be edited. It's already 15,000 words. It's probably going to be a 2.5 hour, 2 hour video. And I'm sorry that they're long, but some of this needs to be long. You have to literally see the text, highlighted, colored pronouns to see the argument and understand why this was not a companion of Paul. So, while I'm tackling the fundamentalist, evangelical, literalist, the undesigned coincidence, topologist, mixologist, I'm going to be hitting all of that, trust me, in this series. I have a problem with the confidence and certainty that I see happening amongst even the critical scholars about the letters of Paul, and then just accepting 1 Corinthians 15 as if, yep, he appeared to more than 500 at once, and some are still alive to this day. What if someone made that up? How do you know the author's not being deceptive? How do you know the author did not invent that the same way that we were eyewitnesses of his majesty on that mountain, and we did not follow cleverly devised myths, is a forger writing in the name of Peter who pretends to be an eyewitness or pretends to have been there and saw it, right? I have questions. I have doubts. I have reasons to be cautious. And before you tell me to walk that bridge that has all of those termite-infested pieces of wood, and you're telling me that some of them aren't termite-infested, I might question, with so much at stake, And on my end, reverse Pascal's wager, so much at stake on actually believing this is historical when all of this, I like to call it like a factory, because that's what Richard C. Miller called it. He said, there's a factory of myth making and forged text, pretending to be Peter or Paul, writing in the name of these guys. They're writing a lot of legends about these characters. Why trust the letters we have in the New Testament? And by the way, most scholars don't trust all of them. They think a lot of them are forged. The pastorals, Ephesians, likely not written by Paul, like all because they have similar language in the 7. Does that authenticate it? I have questions. I just don't get it. We're willing to do that over here with all this material. And then we get to Paul and go, ooh, this happened. This is concrete. 500 really saw him. Nope. He appeared to the 12 for real. Like, what? Why are we questioning that? And even if Paul wrote this in the 50s, why wouldn't we question this guy? I think doubt is a virtue here. I think the skeptical, critical approach is be cautious, don't have too much confidence in something until you have really good reason to do it. And when you see 1,000 termite-infested pieces of wood, and then there's 5, 10 pieces of wood that you're saying are solid, I don't think I can make it across that bridge, number one. But I'm also going to question those 5. You told me there's a ton of infested wood on this bridge. Why would I trust the 5? We know they're making up stuff. You weren't there. You don't have a time machine. Why trust it? That was the problem that was running through my head as I was going to bed last night. And I've been writing, immersed deeply into reading all of this literature. I have a section that I think is going to handle the we passages in a unique fashion, going beyond just Bart, but into Vernon Phillips, and then I go into Dennis R. MacDonald. And Dennis, I think, really hits the nail on the head here, because he doesn't necessarily take the deception route that Bart takes. I say deception, forgery, a form of literary forgery, but he takes a much more literary epic approach, that the author is crafting one hell of a story, and he signals that with we passages as well. And I want to identify that and spell it out so people can really go, that's the go-to video for we passages. And if you want to really get a grasp on some of the ideas that critical scholars think about this, here are some major ideas about that. I even bring in a little bit of the Marcion stuff. Now, it's not necessarily my position, but I highlight a scholar who thinks that Acts may actually be reacting to Marcion. Whether you buy it or not, at the end of the day, that's your call. But there's good reason to think like they are taming Paul, and Paul was too radical in his own letters. Why are they taming Paul? Paul's being weaponized by the Marcion school against the 12, against, much of what the Christian message ultimately becomes by those proto-Catholicizers or those proto-Orthodox Christians. And Paul becomes the chief man. Well, Acts makes Paul, in a sense, submissive to the 12, taking Nazirite vows, circumcising Timothy, lots of stuff. And then also continues him as the hero. So this scholar wonders, is this actually in some way engaging Marcion? Maybe. Then, of course, Steve Mason. I've got a 3-hour documentary coming out on that, maybe more than that. I think it's around 3, showing Luke Acts' dependence on Josephus. And I had apologists, thankfully, comment this, and I'm glad they did, which added an addendum to that script that I had to narrate, that why didn't Josephus just borrow from Luke? Why don't you say that Josephus borrowed from Luke Acts instead? Because Christians see the problem here. There's contradictions. If Luke Acts borrowed from Josephus, we got a problem, number one. If they had a common source, the reconstruction of that would have looked like Josephus, according to Steve Mason, and he, of course, knows this language quite well. Or Luke Acts is just, or Josephus is borrowed from Luke Acts. But that does not make sense, and you'll see why. Anyway, I had to spill the beans and just come out here and tell you. I was staying up, trying to go to sleep, but I couldn't. I was thinking, and I was going, it seems like a problem. Like, why trust these few letters with all of this fictive invention type stuff? Why? Because we have some bright scholars, really bright scholars, who kind of held this tradition that these are authentic and that we should trust them. And even if they were written by Paul, why trust that? Why trust that he actually had the appearance of Jesus to them? He appeared to me, appeared to the 12, he appeared to 500 more than 500 once. Why trust that? Why? Food for thought. Tell me why you think we should. Or do you agree that I'm onto something, or there's something to this, that we shouldn't just trust this, and we shouldn't even trust that they did have visions? So when you're engaging in the sandbox with Christians and they quote a scholar, whether it be Bart Ehrman, Gerd Ludemann, or whoever, and they go, well, they think this is historical fact, there were real appearances that happened here, and this actually is something worth trusting. Should we? Or should we be a little bit like, maybe, but I don't know. With all the forgery work that Bart did, I would come to this and go, whoa, how do I know this isn't BSing too? I'm just super cautious and I'm not so convinced. That's where I'm at today. Subject to change, always subject to change, always subject to learning, and I hope that you are too. Love you all. I'm going to go enjoy dinner with my 19-year-old. Holy frickin' smokes. I'm getting old, ladies and gentlemen. But life is a lot better these days, and I'm going to continue keeping my mind in a good place. But I stayed up late thinking about that, and I wonder if he's thought about that too. Please comment down below. Subscribe. It's free. Hit the bell. Don't just hit the bell. Check all. If you don't, you won't get notified. You just won't. It's just the way it is. So please check it out. Like the video. Comment your thoughts down below. I love you, and never forget, we are Myth Vision.